Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and I'm joined tonight by Cary Shaw and Luther Weeks. Those of you who watch the show frequently have seen Luther before, but this is not really going to be a show about elections. They are kind of, I don't know if you're representing the Secular Coalition for Connecticut.
The Legislative Action Committee.
Okay, the Legislative Action Committee of the Secular Coalition for Connecticut. And we're going to talk about a lot of issues related to what is or is not the role of religion in our democratic country. So welcome, Cary and Luther. And I guess I'll start out by asking each of you how you became active with this issue and how you became active in general working for secular rights or humanist rights.
Yeah. So, I sort of call myself a born-again atheist. And, I was raised as a Methodist, but I just never believed any of it. When I went into the Army, I had to get my dog tags. And I thought, I might go to Vietnam or something, and this is serious. So I didn't want to say any religion in there. But I didn't do much else until maybe 20 years ago. I read a couple of books. And then I said, all these people believe in religion. Maybe I should read up some more and say, could it be possible that they're right? And so I read extensively on this and confirmed myself, as I definitely don't believe in any gods or ghosts or any of that stuff. And just one day I Googled freedom from religion, and I found this organization called Freedom from Religion Foundation, and I joined them. And one thing led to another, and here I am.
And it isn't always easy in this country, especially now, to be free from religion.
And being some particular religions, it's not easy. I feel for people of the Muslim faith, very similar situation we were in. People that are Jewish had similar situations in the past. Strangely enough, more Americans would rather have their daughter date and marry a Muslim than an atheist, and they'd sooner vote for a Muslim for public office than an atheist. And I, by the way, don't have any problem voting for anybody for public office as long as I agree with them and they support the Constitution.
Okay, and you, Cary?
Well, I guess for most people, when we get to be teenage, we begin thinking as an adult and trying to figure things out. And I looked for evidence as to what to believe in all these sort of bigger-than-life questions. And I couldn't find any evidence that was persuasive to me that there's some force out there or some god or gods that are controlling or intensely interested in human affairs and controlling them. So I don't believe in that. I'm perfectly happy that other people are grappling with these questions and they come up with whatever they come up with. But when I've found that there's government interference and government preference for one thing versus another, that's what gets my goat. So a specific example was in one of the presidential debates between George Bush II and his opponent. He was asked what kind of person he would appoint to the Supreme Court. Now, there's a rule in the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. Constitution says in Article 6, and he says it very simply, very directly. This is one of the few things that is so clear you cannot miss it. It says, there shall be no religious test for any office in the United States, period. So when George Bush said, first requirement is, I want to make sure that anybody I appoint to the Supreme Court is a believer in God. I was floored. I didn't expect it. I
don't remember an outrage.
Exactly. That's what made it worse for me. That one person thinks that way, even if he's a candidate for office. But you didn't read about it in the news. If you saw it on TV, like I did, that's one thing. But there was no public outrage. There was no people who said, you claim that you believe in the U.S. Constitution, but you've just made a statement entirely, exactly contrary to it. And they probably didn't bring it up because there's widespread prejudice. He would actually probably get more votes than less if that was pointed out.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that drives me to activism. I basically want everyone to be free what they believe, that anybody who's qualified should be on the Supreme Court, and that the government should be secular.
Well, it's really funny. When I was sworn in to serve on the Board of Education 6 or 7 years ago, I don't remember what the oath was, but I was given a choice of having my hand on either a Bible or a New London Book of Ordinances. And it really seemed like the ordinances were a whole lot more relevant to like the decisions I'd be making as a Board of Ed member than the Bible would be.
Yeah.
At the very least, I'm pretty secular, but even so, I mean, I was taking a municipal office. You know, what sense does it make that I,
Well,
affirm on a Bible?
Yeah, the nut doesn't fall far from the tree, but George Bush Sr. one time made a statement that he wasn't sure if atheists should be considered citizens. And he was asked many times to retract that, revise that, and he refused to ever change that.
Boy, some of our founding fathers would have been in real trouble.
Yes, yes.
Now, there's a lot of vocabulary. When you look at different websites that advocate for secular rights, there are atheist groups, there are humanist groups. How are these groups differentiated from each other, and in what ways are they working together?
Yeah, well, first I'd say that, there's a lot of names, and many people subscribe to more than one name. Okay, because a lot of people claim to be atheists or agnostic, but also free thinkers, skeptics, humanists. So it isn't like somebody's one or the other. You're a New Londoner as well as a woman.
Right.
So we don't say, well, you're a New Londoner, so so you can't be a woman. You must be a New Londoner. So
Right.
we can be many of these things. Though some of the names we don't like, just like other people. I don't personally like infidel or heretic or other than a joke. But I mean, but all those other ones I'm pretty comfortable with.
Yeah. So I believe in reason and compassion. And the most important of these is compassion. Compassion is what's important. And for example, if there's a storm and it destroys part of my neighbor's house, I figure it's up to us that we as people have the power and the responsibility to help others, and we should be helping them. Compassion is important. What I don't believe is that the neighbor's house was blown down in the storm because God was punishing the wicked, and he designed this in order to punish them for bad behavior. I just don't believe it. I mean, some of the audience might, but I don't. Or if someone is sick, I don't believe this is God's punishment. In ancient times, that seemed like a reasonable explanation, but today we know about bacteria, viruses, and whatever, and medical cures. So I believe that when someone's sick, it's up to us, up to me, to try to help them with compassion, chicken soup, whatever, refreshment, care, getting them to the hospital or getting medical help right away. That's what I think actually helps them. Some may believe that prayer is the answer, but that's not my experience. So with those beliefs, I consider myself a humanist. And any of you out there listening to the program who believe the same way I do, you're probably a humanist also. And an area that helps unite and speaks to humanists as well as all sorts of related places is our secular coalition in Connecticut.
And when you were talking, I couldn't help but think that many people, especially listening to the George Bush quotes, like father, like son, that there's a link between people's religious beliefs and whether or not they behave ethically. Now, we've certainly seen very prominent religious people who have done dreadful things.
Yeah.
Right.
So what do you think? Is there no link at all
Well,
between personal ethics
yeah,
and
a
religion?
lot of people look at a humanist or an atheist or whatever, and they say, gee, you should be committing crimes because, if you don't believe in the Ten Commandments or whatever. Well, we don't quite believe that. We don't believe in killing other people. And we don't believe in stealing and raping and, a lot of other things that aren't even in the Ten Commandments. But we also don't believe religious people that the only things keeping them from killing other people is their belief in the Ten Commandments. We think that they're beyond that. They wouldn't go around killing people just because there wasn't any, So we think more highly of them maybe than they do.
Well, they might know better, but yeah, I know there are very ethical religious people as well.
Sure.
It just seems like there's no predictability based on a person's religious beliefs, whether or not their behavior is honorable or compassionate. We're really, having an epidemic in this country right now of non-compassionate Christianity.
Yeah, they say that, I guess God created man in his own image. We kind of think that man created God in their own image.
Well, a lot of artists have expressed this. Let's talk a little about Connecticut, and we do have a slide that shows that Connecticut is not a very religious state. So the 47th most religious state in the nation. What's the least religious?
Vermont, is it, I think?
I think so.
Yeah. But it's close. It's close competition for least religious. It's quite competitive on the other end of the scale, too.
Yeah, probably none of those in New England.
No.
So really, even though there are some instances where people who aren't religious have some kind of discrimination against them, it isn't really much of a minority if you say that 39% of the population of the state is not religious.
Yeah. The other part I like to look at is that 39% includes people that if you ask them, I'm a Methodist or I'm a Catholic, but if you ask them, when was the last time you went to church, they just don't go. Maybe weddings and funerals. So that's kind of, religion's not important to them in their life. But if you look at just atheists and agnostics, that's 8% of Connecticut. If you poll people, they'll say I'm atheist or I'm agnostic. That's more than Jewish people, Muslim, Mormon, Hindi combined. And you wouldn't think so. You'd think that those other groups are pretty pervasive here. We're actually bigger than all of them combined.
And some policies just would not really, you wouldn't know from our state policies. Now, the coalition is working on some bills. The legislative session started just a few weeks ago. And the first bill I wanted to talk about was the idea of oaths. If you go to the website, and we'll show that after a little while, one of the issues you're working on is oaths.
Yeah.
What's the problem with oaths?
Yeah, so if you go in and you're on a jury, or if you're being a witness in court, they give you an oath, and it sort of starts with, I solemnly swear or sincerely affirm, as the case may be, and it sort of ends up with, so help me God, or under perjury, a penalty of perjury, okay? And we're actually fine with that, because that's inclusive. Because the or includes us, and it doesn't require us to say, we didn't necessarily swear, or we don't necessarily believe in a capital G God. But I'm an election official, and we have 21 oaths spelled out in the law in Connecticut, and 14 of those are just like that one in court. But 6 of them are go along the lines of, I solemnly swear, and then they go down to the end and they say, so help me God, period. And that's not an inclusive oath. So by law, I can sort of raise my hand and out myself and say, wait a minute, I don't take that oath. I got to have the alternate non-religious oath. Well, I'm an election official. At 5:15 a.m. on election day, we got a team running around trying to get the polling place open by 6. And I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to tell my supervisor, I don't take that oath. And my supervisor is like, they're clueless, believe me, they would be clueless to this. And I would be outed as an atheist, which I don't mind, But I don't want to be a troublemaker. I don't want to be the cause of the polling place not being open. I don't want to start my relationship with my supervisor destroying her ability to get the place. So I tell them way ahead of time. But in actuality, that's illegal. For the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled just recently, 1961, that that's illegal. It's against the Constitution because you can't be required to out yourself. There should be no religious test for public office. And so we're going to bring Connecticut up to date with that. And it's more serious. There's serious cases where people have high integrity and they refuse to take the religious oath, but on the other hand, they don't want to out themselves. They don't want to risk their job, okay? And it could come to that. They don't want maybe the neighbors to know. Maybe they don't want their kids to be pressured in school. You know, your mom's an atheist or something like that. So we're going to cure that. We're going to get that job done this year. That's what we're hoping. That's SB 740. We just had the hearing on it on Monday. And, you know, we're hoping that the legislature will pass it unanimously.
Now, is that specifically bringing those 6 oaths into line with everything else, or are there other?
Yeah, it's in line with those 14. In fact, most of the 14 were fixed in 2002. It was passed unanimously by both houses of the legislature. There wasn't even any testimony for it or against it, but they were all these judiciary ones. And you could see if your life was on the line and the one witness that could, you know, have your alibi, maybe you wouldn't want the jury to know that witness happens to be an atheist. Or if you're the prosecutor and this one witness that saw the person shoot the gun right at the other person, maybe you would rather not have the jury know that that person's an atheist. So we can see why they changed that law. And you know, everybody can see. I want everybody to see that we need to change it all and bring Connecticut out of the dark ages, so to speak.
Do other states have this problem? I mean, this law?
Well, we haven't been able to find too much. You know, Connecticut may be strange that they have this one law that covers all these oaths, but there are a number of states, I think it's 13, that say, in their constitution, say atheists cannot hold public office. Now, that's been ruled completely illegal, unenforceable, and all that. Yeah. You know, but this is different because we got a law that says this is the oath you're supposed to do. And some of those oaths are written on documents that you have to sign. So, you know, it isn't a matter of saying, well, you know, Ronna can run for office, Cary can run for office, that's okay. And everybody, but this is saying, oh, using a public official, you got to use this oath. And somebody might challenge you if you didn't do what the law said. So we got to really get the law changed here to correct this.
And I was in a situation where I did not suspect that I would be asked that oath. And I was in a large crowd. They're all being sweared in at the same time. And we're asked to stand and say this. And this was a shock. So I decided to speak out and explain that I was a humanist. And I didn't believe there was another force that was going to help us. But I believed, I believe that we're out to help each other and to make the world a better place. And it turned out to be okay. But even though mentally, I figured I was confident, my heart was really pounding. I couldn't control my heart. It was going out of control because somehow the body knew that I was at risk in terms of 40 other people and possibly not getting the job. This was swearing into a job. This was not a Connecticut oath. And that's an interesting experience. I was accepted, but
you didn't know you would be.
Why would I be called upon to say that if I was going to be accepted anyway?
Yeah, I was in a case a few years ago, and I was one of maybe half a dozen people that had got petitions for a candidate to get on the ballot. We went down to the town clerk's office. And by the way, the town clerk's a friend of mine. And so she said, blah, 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 so help me God. And I said, no, I won't swear, but I will affirm. And she was completely taken aback. Now, I don't know to this day, is she very religious? And suddenly, like this person she probably viewed as a friendly, you know, she thinks much less of me.
Or differently.
Or maybe she's, wow, nobody's ever done that before. This guy's really, good guy and has high integrity. I don't know. But then what about the other 5 people there? Some of them say, I didn't realize he was one of those. I won't know. There's a bias that even if they don't think they're biased, there's a bias that may affect their relationship with me in ways neither of us understand.
And, I can't help think that some religious people also benefit from this. Orthodox Jews also do not swear.
Right.
It's, the Ten Commandments says you're not supposed to be taking God's name, right?
Well, if you were very religious, wouldn't you want me to know there's a penalty of perjury if I don't believe in God?
Oh, absolutely.
And you know what? If you believe in God, I just as soon have you, fearful of God, as I say, perjury and purgatory. So.
Although I'd actually feel more comfortable in a civil setting under penalty of perjury, because who knows what action God will take, really.
Yeah.
So that's one of the bills, and it sounds as though you don't expect a whole lot of controversy.
Well, I don't expect a whole lot of controversy. The other side is it's hard to get bills through in any case, so we're just hoping that it's like the one in 2002, the committee passes it unanimously and they put it on a consent calendar, because that's the easy way to get a bill passed. With the crunch of all the bills, it's very hard if a bill, even if it's not really controversial, but let's say 10 people want to vote against it, that can slow a bill down an awful lot. So we're hoping it goes straight through. We'll see.
Now, if it goes through, will that trickle down to all the municipalities within Connecticut? Or if we wanted to make sure our local oaths were secular, would we have to act on a town-by-town basis?
No, I don't think I would think the Connecticut law would override. Connecticut law sort of has a catch-all, all oaths, blah, blah, blah. So I think it would probably override anything. But the problem is, without the law changing, if you're a municipal official, you might want to do the right thing. You might want to obey the Constitution. But on the other hand, you're sort of obliged to follow the law in Connecticut as well. So, it's a lot easier if we get the law changed.
It is. Now, the other bill that you were talking about was related to medical issues, which are really, have the potential to be very impactful on people's lives.
Yes, absolutely.
So what's the story?
Rightly, it's true. If you're sick, you're not necessarily in a position to stand up for yourself if you're lying in bed.
Right.
Right. So.
And the care you receive can actually be influenced.
So one of the bills that's becoming prominent in the U.S. today, state by state, is called the Patient's Right to Know. And basically, we say the patient, as well as potential patient and the public, have a right to know if a medical provider is withholding sound medical treatment for reasons that are not medical, for reasons that are based on their philosophy or their religion or some precepts that are handed to them by somebody else who's not a doctor. You would think that medical treatments should not be withheld in the first place, but given that they are and can be, you would think at least, you'd have to be informed. There is a thing called informed consent. But it turns out we have no law that says that you have to be informed. Now, as an example of that, there is the health talk.
Okay, let's take a look at this slide. And
okay, so this is a document. This was a mass mailing. I didn't ask for it. I got it in my mail. This is a
they probably are regretting they sent it to you.
Possibly, very possibly.
They may think he's sick. Yeah.
Okay, but this was a mass mailing. This is the cover to a multi-page, full-color brochure telling you that a hospital that's fairly local to me is the place to go for pregnancy, labor, and birth of kids. And inside there's a page that specifically says, yeah, okay,
Yeah, and there's,
special delivery. In the very first paragraph, and I underlined it, it says, and this is a doctor at the hospital, people ask me all the time if there's any complications or problems or whatever relating to pregnancy, labor, or birth, can we take care of them? And the article says, absolutely, definitely, yes, period. Nowhere in this document that goes to the public does it say, there's some procedures they won't do. So if you go to the website of this hospital,
okay,
And-
and I did, there's,
okay, if you go to the website, now if you look at their homepage, it doesn't mention any problem. And then you go to the page on services, it lists a whole bunch of, if within services you go to gynecology or something related, no mention of any problem. How many people choosing a hospital is going to run to the page that has the boring title, Mission and Values? I mean, I bet I'm the only person in Connecticut that has done this because I didn't know to look there.
you
So-
imagine that, like, the
Yeah.
Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah, yeah, of
just
course.
covered
Mission and
all
values.
of that,
You-
I mean,
right?
what the heck is the mission of a hospital? Doesn't everybody know that?
You and
don't
the
have to look that up.
You and the high-priced consultant to the PR department have looked at that page.
Okay, midway down the page, it says that they adhere to a document that's not written by doctors. It's written, it's a 43-page document, by the way. There's no link to it. A 43-page document that's called the Religious and Ethical Directives for Catholic Healthcare Services, as published by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops.
And that's at the bottom of the part of the slide that
Right.
you see here.
And
right?
apparently they know a lot about women's health, these
Apparently.
bishops.
Okay, so what are the problems here? And there's several problems. But first of all, I have nothing against Catholic people. And there's a large population of Catholic people in Connecticut, but most of them do not adhere to all the pronouncements of the bishops and the official canon. I mean, if you take a look at contraception, and you compare actual Catholic people in Connecticut, and you compare that with what the bishops say, a very wide divergence.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not in any way denigrating anybody who belongs to or adheres to personally Catholic stuff. As a matter of fact, if you have a person who really wants to go to a hospital that adheres to these directives, how would they know? Okay, one reason they might know is they say, well, okay, I'm going to look at the name of the hospital. If it's Saint somebody, okay,
Right.
so let's say you live in Hartford. You don't want to go to Saint whatever. So you're going to go to Mount Sinai Hospital in Hartford, right? Mount Sinai Hospital in Hartford was taken over by the Catholic conglomerates, and it is a Catholic hospital that adheres to these same directives. So you wouldn't know by the name.
No one would really know.
You wouldn't know by the name, no. So, so this is a long discussion, and I know we have limited
Yeah.
time. So, so these Catholic directives are not necessarily the beliefs of Catholics, but what would be the harm? You know, if someone believes they know better than you, why wouldn't they tell you what they believe and make it clear and obvious?
And it really ought to be clear and obvious. When I was looking at some of the materials that you had sent,
Yeah.
I was thinking about a show we had done a few years ago on compassionate care for rape victims. And when it's an emergency and women are brought to the closest hospital, some of these Catholic hospitals were not giving these women all their options.
Right.
And it's very time sensitive. So it was a huge problem, and these hospitals do function as public hospitals.
Right.
Yes, yes.
Right, because they're public money. And
Yeah.
they're emergency, they do emergency services.
And so about 45% of the revenues of these hospitals, of Medicare and Medicaid, which is public money.
So really, they should be held to the same standard as
Absolutely.
public hospitals.
And at least let people know. You know, there's a lot of hospitals you go to, and they'll say, well, we don't treat cancer that well, or we don't treat this. You really need to go to this other hospital or one of these other hospitals to do it. This is no different here. It's like you have one of these issues, you know, you really need to go someplace else if you want the entire spectrum of women's health, if you want the best choice. But it's like, we think of pristine people going to the hospital. They're not going to an ordinary doctor's visit. They may not have been raped, but they may have been in a situation where they're under a huge stress. There may be a semi-emergency. You know, they don't have time to read all this stuff and go research this information. They're hurting and they need help, and and especially an older person or even a mentally disabled person, you know, they need some help and guidance in this.
And you would, and we can kind of quickly go through some of these slides. This ethical and religious directives for Catholic healthcare services. We have some things underlined that you can see that Catholic healthcare services must adopt these directives, and and no treatment could be something that isn't told to people.
Right.
You know, and then there were some more. I was really shocked. One of them said they talk about victim of sexual assault, but one thing that really shocked me was I think they didn't think hospitals should deal with ectopic pregnancies.
That's right.
And it's just beyond me why any medical facility would not treat a woman with a life-threatening condition.
Now, I love the word ectopic because I must say a little while ago, I didn't know what it means. So actually I have a pair of ectopic eyeglasses. Ectopic means something is outside of where it's supposed to be. So when I leave my eyeglasses on the counter, I tell people they're ectopic, okay? Because they're supposed to be on my head or in my pocket.
Fortunately, not life-threatening.
Okay, so we all know the story of the sperm and the egg. The egg comes down into the uterus, the sperm goes into the uterus, they meet, and that's where the baby is formed. But they might meet somewhere else. Could be that the egg is on its way down the fallopian tube, hasn't reached the uterus yet, or some other place. The sperm finds its way there. Us males are pretty inventive that way. And something starts growing there. Well, it may start growing, and it may actually have a little bit of a heartbeat. But it's not going to survive, because it can't survive. It's in the wrong place.
Right.
It's ectopic. And so eventually, there's going to be a lot of anguish, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and no viable human being is going to result. And so OBGYNs, no. You've got ectopic pregnancy, basically, you're going to remove it so that the woman is ready for a real live birth of a viable human being. But according to this document, in the hospitals that adhere to this hospital document, they won't do it. Because in their view, it's all based on the possibility, the remote, no matter how remote, there's going to be a kid.
And I can even see people who are, you know, who are religious, but other religions having quite different beliefs. I mean, I grew up Jewish, and in general, Judaism values the life of the mother more than the life of the unborn. Right. It's like, if you're here, you count more. Right. And so you could have a fairly observant Jew who would not have the same beliefs as this hospital is imposing.
Right. And I would suspect that many people who maybe are Catholic have a different view if they have this condition.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. But
or if they were told the options once they go to their favorite Catholic hospital. If they were told their options, their religious views might change pretty quick.
By the way, you probably want to know this. One example, this happened in Michigan. I'll tell you why it's important for Connecticut. Because this wound up into a court case. Woman goes to the hospital. She's having a miscarriage. Okay, she's not planning to have a miscarriage. Right. Miscarriages are more common than you might believe, but people generally don't talk about them. They're embarrassed. But basically, the pregnancy is not working, and the body starts expelling this thing. Sometimes it happens okay. Sometimes it gets stuck. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes it's very threatening. In this particular case, the woman was having extreme pain and some bleeding, so she goes to the hospital. Unbeknownst to her, it's a Catholic hospital. So she's not told that a standard medical procedure is to help the woman complete the miscarriage. Instead, she's told, go home. She comes back the next day. It's even more painful. She's told, take a pain reliever, go home. Third day, go home. She's not informed. She's not even informed that she could go somewhere else where they don't have these restrictions and get this thing taken care of. So eventually, and the threat here is massive bleeding, rupture of the organs, a consequent sepsis. Sepsis is an invasion of the entire body system by bacteria. Once you've got sepsis, it's very, very bad. You could easily die of it. So she goes through it. It finally does happen. She's got this little baby, which dies in 2 hours. Is this a wonderful life experience that you just had? A wonderful experience with your baby, watching it turn blue and die in your arms? Is this something and a kind of experience that we want everybody to have if they can? I don't think so. So anyway, that was in Michigan, but they were sued. But the hospital was owned by one of the biggest healthcare conglomerates in the U.S. Called Trinity Health, which adheres to the Catholic perspectives. So how does it apply to Connecticut? Well, in the last year, Trinity Health bought up 4 Connecticut hospitals. So it applies here, as well as a nursing home. And I know you're thinking, how many people in a nursing home are pregnant? Yeah. But there's a lot of other procedures that relate that are included in this thing. So, including the Mount Sinai that I just referred to.
So there's several stories to that. We don't have any too serious stories from Connecticut, but we have other ones, very life-threatening from around. We have a simple one in Connecticut, though. Young woman, went to St. Francis Hospital for gynecological services, and I think she wanted an IUD or some other type of pregnancy prevention. And she went in there, and they wouldn't provide it to her. At least she found out in the process because she knew what she wanted. And I found out, and I talked to her. And, I said, it's not too big a thing because you're going to go to another doctor and you're going to get the, She said, well, I'm a very busy college student. And it's hard for me to take off the time to take that. And, I had to pay for that, and my insurance company had to pay for that. So they're going to have to pay again, and I'm going to have to pay again, and I'm going to have to take another day off to get this thing. And if I had known, I never would have gone there in the first place. My feeling is that once there's a little publicity about this fact, we'll hear about some cases, some sad cases in Connecticut. But what we want to do is pass the bill before we have any more.
So we don't have the sad cases.
Yeah.
And it seems as though the right to know is the minimum that should happen. If you walk in the door and this hospital will not provide the services in a timely manner, then the first thing you should hear before they take your insurance card number is you need to go somewhere else.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And even help getting there. Because, like some of these people are in not good shape. Think of a parent in a nursing home goes to the hospital and, they need some help to get to the right hospital, which to me is a very routine thing. I mean, we don't do cancer here, we don't do that here. Right. You need to go to the other hospital in town, or or maybe out of state even.
And I have one other, Catholic health institutions may not promote or condone contraceptive practices, no sterilization, and they even mention on the previous page, even if the baby would be extremely disabled, even if it's an extrauterine pregnancy. It's something they won't do.
Absolutely, that's right.
And sure, any patient has the right to make those choices themselves, but it's their job.
Yeah, and I think they limit end-of-life directives. They won't necessarily do all the range of end-of-life directives that people might have.
Well, I noticed that end-of-life care and aid in dying is another issue that perhaps doesn't have a bill this year, but that the Secular Coalition is working on or spreading information about. Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I think there is a bill this year. We're not sure if it's going to
Oh.
be heard or not. Yeah, several states have this, and this is where you're sane, but you've got a very unpleasant life, incurable disease, and impossible pain. Your opportunity to choose when and how you might die. Okay, I think of a story about a person, and he called a group that I know and said, "Well, I'm donating, funds to your group, and I'm going to die of cancer." And the person he talked to knew him and said, "Yeah, that's terrible. I really feel sorry for you." Well, he said, "Yeah, but you know what? I live in Oregon, and I was 2 weeks away from moving to some other state when I got this diagnosis. I'm so glad that I got the diagnosis before I left Oregon, because I can stay here in Oregon and end my life when I choose."
Yeah, and Oregon passed that just a few years ago, correct?
It's been a while.
Someone told me it's been about 2 decades already.
Oh, yeah?
And there's some
Oh.
other states have, and with no problems, with no discernible, I mean, the wonderful thing about state laws is the states are the test bed for democracy and laws. So in other words, if a state or states adopt something, you get a chance to see how it actually works out before you make it national, and it's worked out fine. But people should realize about aid in dying, it actually doesn't promote aid in dying, but rather provides a whole host of protections. So the aid in dying bill says, you have to do this, you have to have this, you have to have that. Has to be certified by medical personnel that your condition is terminal within 6 months. That your wish has to be certified by 2 different people at 2 different times, separated in time. This cannot be just a temporary depression. So there's a ton of requirements in there that provide all sorts of protections, as opposed to without that bill, people do any old thing. Maybe they don't report it, but there's no protections for the patient and for the helpers. And protection for the helpers is important also, because if you help someone, in my case, if I was terminally ill, I feel I've done what I needed to in my life. My kid has grown, and I don't want my life savings to be utilized and eaten up by hospital expenses. I'd rather get it over with soon and have that dispensed to the people I love. And why shouldn't someone who helps me with that be free of possible imprisonment for the rest of their life for helping in someone die?
Yeah, this bill has been around in Connecticut for a long time, and they just haven't been able to get through the legislature, even though it's widely supported by a lot of people in Connecticut. And the thing is, all the things that people on the other side bring up, all these nightmares of this is what's going to happen, they're things that haven't happened in Oregon. So I could see the first time if this is a bill that nobody ever passed before. There's legitimate concerns, but here you got, and it isn't just Oregon. I think Vermont has it. There's countries in Europe that have it. These are not things that happen. These are not things that we got to worry about.
Well, you have we lost our slides, but you have an advocacy day coming up in Hartford in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about what you're going to be talking about and how people can, if who want to go up and join you,
Yeah.
can go about doing that.
So yeah, two things. It's on March 13th, so that's pretty close
Yeah.
to where we are, and we're cutting off the registration for either this Friday or this Monday. So if you wanna go on March 13th and be part of this, you need to sign up this week, and you can go to the Secular Coalition website, which
Okay,
is
and there's-
ct.secular.org, and there's a sign up thing there. Yeah, so this is people that believe in the kind of bills that we've been talking about, that believe there are things that they want to have available to them in the state of Connecticut and for their friends and their relatives that they want to know when they go to a hospital. They want to be able to take an oath without identifying themselves that they can really get behind. They believe in things like aid and dying. They believe in science. So they could consider doing this. We're going to set up meetings with all the legislators that we can, especially the legislators of the people that are showing up, to go and introduce the whole idea of the fact that there's a lot of secular individuals in the state, and we have some values that we would like to have the legislature take into account.
And I would say that a state legislator called me today saying that she thought it was great that we'd be coming up. She appreciates the support on these bills, and she's looking forward to seeing us in person in the Capitol.
So that's great, and it sounds as though you're looking for people throughout the state.
Yes,
to,
absolutely.
People to talk to their own legislators wherever they are.
Right. So, if you came to it, then we would try and set up a meeting with your state senator and your state representative. And, that's probably the only reason they would meet with us is because you were there, because they want to meet with their constituents. They want to hear what their constituents say. They don't want to hear what somebody else has to say as much at all.
So if we give somebody a statistic, we give them a page, we give a legislator a page that said, according to the Gallup poll this past year, 39% of Connecticut residents self-identify as non-religious, and they would support these bills, most of them, if not more than them. And the legislator might say, well, that's a survey, that's a piece of paper, but where's the person? If they care about it, why aren't they speaking to me? This is Connecticut's first secular advocacy day, and that's what we're trying to address. There's actual real people, and in our experience so far, whether the legislator is in favor or against or just ignorant of these bills, they know it's their job to talk to their constituents, the voters, and find out what the voters think. And so it's a wonderful experience, and it's a great experience. And if you've never seen the state capitol, you'll want to do that. So
And I just say, as you go, we go around. I talked to my doctor about this. I talked to friends about it. I talked to people about the oath bill. It's amazing how many people immediately think these are great ideas. Okay, it's amazing how many non-religious people you will find when you talk about the oaths bill to a bunch of people. But almost everybody I've talked to, religious, not religious, medical people, ordinary people, they think these are all good ideas.
Yeah, and you don't have to be non-religious to really benefit from that. And if you think of our country, being protecting it from a state religion, really that would help all of us.
Exactly.
Now, is there going to be a way that people can submit written testimony at some point?
Well, for the oaths bill, the time has passed.
Oh.
We had the testimony last week, so that's. But that doesn't mean you couldn't call your legislator. If you go to the legislature's site, which is cga.ct.gov, there's a thing that says representation, and you can drop down from that. It has one of these find your legislator, so you can put your address in. It'll tell you who they are. The site also has their website, their phone number, all that. So if you support these things, you can call them up. And right now would be a great time to call them up and say you support the oaths bill. Say you support SB 740. Say you think that, we need open and fair and constitutional oaths in the state, and support SB 740. With the other, we haven't got a bill number for the patient's right to know. But you could just let them know that, you support the patient's right to know.
So if you've missed that, all you have to do is Google Connecticut Legislature or Connecticut General
Right.
Assembly. And in terms of signing up for Advocacy Day for Monday, March 13th, go to ct.secular.org.
And it's right there, it's right on the front page
Yeah,
of
the
that
sign-up sheet, and it
website.
won't be there too much longer because we have to have a cutoff date.
Well, you have about 2 more minutes. Are there any last thoughts on, like, why we should do this?
Well, I just say that, Connecticut honors the non-religious. We have in the state capitol, right in the legislative office building, we have the Connecticut Hall of Fame. And at least 4 people on there that are thought well of in Connecticut on the Hall of Fame. Mark Twain, Katharine Hepburn,
Oh.
Paul Newman, by the way, a great philanthropist, Paul Newman, and Stephen Sondheim. I think there's some others on there, but,
I suspect there are more.
yeah, I suspect there's more, but we honor those kind of people, and we want those kind of people here in Connecticut to do the next great thing for us.
Well, thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Luther. And I hope some people watching it will sign up and go talk to their legislators about it. And, let us know afterwards how it all goes.
Well, thanks for having us on.
It was a
Thank
great
you.
pleasure.
Thank you for coming on. Before the community calendar, I did promise Cindy Barry, who had to reschedule to next month because there was a snow day when she was originally going to come onto the show, that Legislative Health District is going to start its diabetes program next Monday, March 6th. It's a 7th session program that's going to be held at the Community Health Center. And you can contact Cindy at Legislative Health District if you're interested in signing up or getting more information. I'm sure it's on the Legislative website as well. So good night, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Africa,